Just a quiet gym receptionist. That's all anyone saw when they swiped their membership cards each morning. Small, modest, the kind of woman bodybuilders looked right through. But what the Navy SEAL trainer noticed had gone undetected by everyone else. Either no one had seen it before, or it was too rare for anyone to recognize. Because sometimes the strongest warriors are the ones you never see coming. Welcome to Silent Warriors. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Keep watching to uncover this mystery. Jessica Torres was 26 years old and professionally invisible. Just another face behind the counter at Iron Core Gym. Small-framed, soft-spoken, the kind of person customers looked through rather than at. She kept her hair in a neat bun, always wore long sleeves, and never talked about herself. Large protein shake, extra creatine, the muscled man would bark without looking up from his phone. Coming right up, Jessica would respond with the same polite smile she'd perfected over 2 years. The regulars knew nothing about her except that her name was Jessica, she was reliable, and she was forgettable. Perfect background music for their busy lives. Jessica preferred it that way. Anonymity was safer than recognition. Questions were more dangerous than curiosity. But Jessica Torres hadn't always been invisible. 2 years ago, she was someone completely different. Every morning at 5:30, Jessica would open the gym alone. She appreciated the solitude, the routine that quieted memories that never quite stayed buried. The sound of weight machines, the flow of members coming and going, the familiar weight of coffee in the air. These simple tasks kept her anchored in a world that felt safe and predictable. Her coworkers knew almost nothing about her past. Mike, the afternoon personal trainer, had tried making conversation during shift changes. "Where did you work before this?" Mike had asked on a slow Tuesday. "Different places," Jessica had replied, wiping down the counter with unnecessary precision. "What kind of places?" "Nothing interesting." Mike had learned to stop asking questions. Jessica was friendly enough, but there was something in her eyes that suggested some stories were too heavy to share with people who couldn't understand them. Iron Core Gym was one of the city's most prestigious fitness centers. Membership cost $300 a month, state-of-the-art equipment, and promises of elite fitness. The clientele usually fell into 2 categories: wealthy businessmen working off daytime stress and professional bodybuilders who thought they were gods. Jessica handled both with the same calm professionalism, but she was dismissed at least 5 times per average day. "Hey, little lady," Brad, a 240-pound bodybuilder, would say, "we're out of protein powder. Order more." "Sure, Brad, it'll arrive tomorrow morning." "It's not will arrive. It should have arrived. I'm prepping for competition. Don't you understand?" Jessica would maintain her smile. "Sorry, I'll call the supplier right away." Brad would turn to his friends. "These girls don't understand anything. What do they know about fitness?" What Brad didn't know was that Jessica had hiked 20 kilometers with a 120-pound pack. The worst customer was Tyler Morrison. 28 years old, worked at his father's company, came to the gym for show, took more selfies than he did actual training. Tyler specifically targeted Jessica. "Jessie," he'd shout approaching the counter, "get me a towel and make sure it's clean this time." "Of course, Tyler, it's actually Jessica." "Whatever, you're just the cleaning girl here, right?" He'd laugh to his friends. "Think this little girl could lift more weight than me?" Snickers. The same Snickers every time. Jessica would hand over the towels and say nothing, because she knew Tyler bench-pressed 185 pounds, and nobody knew that Jessica had carried a 220-pound wounded teammate 3 kilometers in the Marine Corps, fully armed and equipped. The only difference at the gym was Jack Jackson, retired Navy SEAL, now doing personal training for elite clients. 45 years old, calm, distant, but his eyes were always scanning his surroundings. He wasn't the type to advertise his military background, but Jessica had noticed the discipline in his movements. Jackson treated Jessica differently than the others. He made eye contact, said, "Good morning," and actually waited for her response like he was really listening. He never asked questions, but watched her, as if he'd noticed something but couldn't figure out what it was. "Good morning, Jessica. How are you today?" "Good, thank you. How are you?" "Not bad. By the way, you're not the only one who has problems with that Tyler." Jessica was surprised. "What do you mean?" "Some people confuse respect with intimidation. Real strength usually comes quietly. What Jackson didn't know was exactly how quietly Jessica could come. That week, Jackson began observing Jessica more carefully. How she handled emergencies, immediate first aid when someone fell, perfectly diffusing situations when fights broke out. Her hands never trembled, panic never entered her voice. One afternoon, when the power went out, Jessica had automatically initiated emergency protocols. She'd calmly evacuated people, checked for injuries, brought the situation under control. Jackson watched this thinking, this woman has been trained. But what kind of training? March 27th, Tuesday morning. Jessica had arrived earlier than usual because new equipment was being delivered. While carrying heavy cardboard boxes alone, her shirt sleeve tore slightly at the shoulder. "Damn," she muttered. After positioning the boxes, she went to the sink to check her arm. Her shirt sleeve was torn, but part of the tattoo underneath was visible. Just the eagle portion of the eagle, globe, and anchor. Jessica immediately covered her arm. She'd been so careful for 2 years. Long sleeves, always covered, never raising questions. When the gym opened at 6 a.m., Jessica was at the counter as usual. Brad arrived first, Tyler right behind him. "Jessie, is the protein shake ready?" Tyler shouted. "Absolutely." Jessica reached for the shake from the blender above the bar. When her arm went up, the tear opened a bit more. That's when Jackson's gaze was drawn there. And in that moment, everything changed. Jackson saw the eagle. Just a portion of it, but that distinctive part of the Marine Corps symbol. Recognition was impossible to miss because he'd seen that tattoo thousands of times, because he'd served dozens of missions with Marines. The shake nearly slipped from Jessica's hand. Jackson and Jessica locked eyes. They both understood. Jackson's face was frozen in shock. Jessica's face had turned to panic. Tyler was still talking. "And go easy on the syrup this time. Last time it was too sweet." But Jackson and Jessica were in another dimension. Military recognition moment. 2 veterans, 2 different branches, but the same understanding. Jackson waited until 5 p.m. that day. After the gym closed, he approached Jessica and indicated he wanted to talk. Jessica looked around desperately, but there was nowhere to escape. They both knew what they were going to discuss. In the parking lot, Jackson got straight to the point. He asked which unit she'd served in with the Marine Corps. Jessica hesitated, then said she'd served with the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. When he wanted to know where she'd deployed, Jessica explained she'd completed 2 tours in Afghanistan. Jackson nodded respectfully and shared that he'd served with SEAL Team 5, with 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq. Jessica said she'd known he was military from his movements, that she'd noticed from the first day. They stood in silence for a while. 2 veterans, very different lives, but carrying the same burden. Jackson expressed curiosity about why she worked here, why a Marine was dealing with protein shakes. Jessica's answer was simple. Because nobody asks questions. This was the kind of explanation Jackson could understand. He'd also stopped asking questions. Jessica told Jackson her story. She was a combat veteran who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan. She'd been lightly wounded in an IED explosion, but had saved her teammates. She hadn't received a Purple Heart, but had a combat action ribbon. When Jackson asked what happened after coming home, Jessica explained she'd experienced PTSD. The nights were difficult. She struggled in crowded places. The gym strangely comforted her because it was a controlled environment. Noise was expected. People got tired. When he asked if she'd received treatment, Jessica said she'd gotten treatment at the VA for 2 years, was better now, but people didn't understand. People ask, what was war like? As if they'd watched a movie, or what's PTSD like? Approaching it like therapists. Jackson understood these things. He'd realized that nobody here knew who Jessica really was. Jessica confirmed. Here she was, just Jessica, the girl who made protein shakes. Sometimes this was easier. Jackson's story was similar. After retiring from the Navy, adapting to civilian life had been difficult. The gym felt like therapy to him. Routine, discipline, purpose. But Jackson had observed how Brad and Tyler treated Jessica, asking if this didn't bother her. Jessica shrugged and said they didn't know. She knew, and that was enough. Jackson questioned whether it was really enough. It took Jessica several minutes to answer. Finally, she admitted that sometimes it wasn't enough. especially when Tyler treated other women the same way, as if being weak was normal for them. Jackson noted that there were many female members at this gym, and they were uncomfortable with Tyler's behavior. Jessica said she was aware of this, but thought if she said something, they'd say, "Feminist girl got triggered." Jackson suggested she tell them who she was. Jessica had never thought of this. 2 years of hiding, concealing, being invisible. But maybe it was time to be open. Jessica asked how she would do it. Jackson suggested she show Tyler and Brad who she was, what she'd accomplished. Jessica wasn't going to tell war stories. Jackson said she didn't need to tell stories, just show her tattoo, say she was a Marine, let them understand she wasn't weak. Jessica hesitated. What if they asked questions? Jackson said she wasn't obligated to answer. She just needed to indicate she deserved respect. Maybe Jackson was right. Maybe hiding wasn't serving. The next morning, Jessica arrived a little different. Instead of a long-sleeved shirt, she wore short sleeves. Her Marine Corps tattoo was visible, but she was no longer trying to hide it. Brad noticed first and asked what the tattoo was, pointing to it. Jessica simply said it was Marine Corps. Brad's mouth fell open. He asked if she'd been a soldier. Jessica said she'd been a Marine. Just then, Tyler approached, wanting to know what was happening. Brad said Jessica had been in the military. Tyler laughed and said he didn't believe Jessica was a soldier, probably her boyfriend's tattoo. Jackson approached at that moment and told Tyler in a calm but authoritative voice that Jessica had served with the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, was a combat veteran, and had completed 2 tours in Afghanistan. Tyler's laughter vanished from his face. Brad asked if this was real. Jessica nodded. When they asked how long she'd served, Jessica said 4 years active duty. When they asked if she'd seen combat, Jessica looked at Jackson. Jackson nodded encouragingly. Jessica explained she'd experienced IED explosions, mortar attacks, and firefights. The gym's atmosphere had completely changed. After that day, the treatment toward Jessica completely changed. Brad apologized for his previous behavior. Tyler was more ashamed and couldn't make eye contact for a while. But the biggest change was in the other gym members. News spread about who Jessica was, and people began approaching differently. Female members especially wanted to talk to her. "Were you really a Marine? What was it like? You must be so strong." Jessica initially felt uncomfortable with this attention, but then she realized this was inspiring for others, especially for young women. One day, Mia, a 19-year-old college student, approached. "Jessica, I'm thinking about joining the military, but my family says it's too hard for women. What do you think?" Jessica looked at Mia. Young, determined, but fear was also in her eyes. "Hard," Jessica said. "Very hard, but not impossible. If you really want it and your reasons are right, you can do it." "Do you regret it?" Jessica thought. Even on my hardest days, I never regretted it. Because the things I learned, the strength I gained, both physical and mental, nobody can take those away from me." Mia went to the military recruitment office that day. 6 months later, Jessica was still working at Iron Corps Gym, but she was no longer just the receptionist. Now she was Jessica, Marine veteran Jessica. People approached her with respect, asked for advice. Some came just to say thank you. Even Tyler had changed. He was still arrogant but respectful toward Jessica, and he treated other female members better too. Brad had started asking Jessica for workout tips. "You had a real military training, we're just gym rats." Jackson had made Jessica an offer. "There's a part-time counselor position at the VA for female veterans. You might be interested." Jessica was thinking about it. Maybe it was time to be more open, maybe to share her experience. One evening, after the gym closed, Jackson said to Jessica, "Do you regret it?" Being open, Jessica looked at her Marine Corps tattoo, no longer hidden, carried with pride. Number Y hid for 2 years because it felt safe. But I realized that hiding isn't serving. Real serving is inspiring others. Jackson smiled. "Mia joined the military, did you know?" "Yes, she called me yesterday. She's going to basic training." "You became a role model for her." Jessica nodded. "And I can be for others too. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't hiding, but showing who you are." Jessica Torres was no longer just a gym receptionist. She was an inspiring Marine veteran, making protein shakes but also teaching young women to follow their dreams. She no longer hid her Marine Corps tattoo, because that ink didn't just represent the past, it represented the future too. Comment respect if you believe every veteran should take pride in their service. Subscribe to Silent Warriors for hidden hero stories.